First of all, thank you for inviting me over. I know this is probably one of the very few times when you guys are going to hear about the officer mission from the district team. I know I've spoke to at least two of you guys, and then I have a former OSO in here, so there's some knowledge out there about the officer mission, which is great. But for everyone else, like if you have any questions throughout the brief, please don't hesitate. Let me know, and I'll pause. But my name is Major Ishmael Villalobos. I'm the Assistant Officer Procurement. With me, I have the Aviation Assistant Officer Procurement, so a double A we call him, right? And really, between him and I, we manage the officer procurement mission for the district, which obviously impacts you guys, as you guys will have either one OST under your team, or perhaps two, depending on who you're with. But that's who I am. That's who Nick is. He is an aviator background, Osprey pilot, sweaty. That's his call sign. So, in case you were wondering. So just want to cover the structure of the officer procurement team and how it relates to the district team as well as yourselves, right? So obviously we have the DC on top of us, and then I work for him directly, and then just like you guys do as well, right, down at the recruiting stations. So side by sides, obviously major, commander, major on your end. And then under you guys are going to be responsible, as you guys know, for the officer mission as well as the enlisted mission, right? So the officer piece is where we come in as the Assistant of Officer Procurement, working once again directly for the district CO. How we are tied, intermingled with you guys is through the officer selection teams that obviously work for you guys, right? Captain, who's out there managing both the PLC, the Platoon Leaders Class Program, as well as the Officer Candidate Course Program. OCC and PLC are the two big ones. We can get into the whole officer mission. Major Glenn knows how complicated it could get, and I'll kind of hit on that, but for now, just understand that the two programs that your OSAs are going to be managing are the PLC and the OCC. And like I said, my double AOP works for me. He's my right-hand man, and when I'm not here, he's the one that manages our teams. You can see the line that connects myself to the officer selection officers. So it's my relationship with them is purely operational, right? So I don't write their fit reps, the RSCOs do. They don't work for me, they work for the RSCO. However, there's an operational link between us and them, and more often than not, we actually deal with the OSOs more than sometimes the RSCO, the Sergeants Major, the XOs, the OPSOs, and whatnot. So, very tight relationship between us and them. And there are a lot of questions that or a lot of topics that they may not necessarily discuss with you. Once I get into the following slides, I'll kind of hit what those things, the things that you should be looking for, the things that you should be asking them about. But nonetheless, we are right next to each other, so you're adjacent at any time that you have questions about the officer mission. That's why we're here, right, to support you guys as the OSOs work to make your mission, and then obviously you guys work to make the DCO's mission. Do I have any questions on this one? No, fairly simple, right? So just think of me as your operations officer for the officer side, right? Just like you have, do I have any operations officers here? Operation officer for the enlisted side. I do the same thing for the officer side. So some of the responsibilities, the main responsibility of our shop is really the management of the officer mission. And that one is structured in tiers, right? So it goes from MCRIC to region to the district, right? So MCRIC assigns the mission to the 1-star. The 1-star assigns mission to the district CO. And then we, as an officer selection or AOP team, massage that mission based on historical metrics, based on the abilities of the individual OSOs themselves. And presented to the DCO, who then assigns it to you guys as RSs, and then in turn you turn around and assign a mission letter to your officer selection officer. As you can see there, the underlined words there are really the 3 missions that we as an officer procurement side of the house deal with, right? So we have a shipping mission, and really that's your submission mission. And then we have our induction mission, and then the accession mission. So if you want to, this is where I could spend, and Eric can tell you that we can spend about an hour talking about these 3 missions separately. But for your awareness, the only thing that you guys have to worry about is really the submission mission. Just know that there are other missions that we, or perhaps even MCRIC or WORR, have to worry about. Again, kind of complicated there, but just remember submission mission is the key for you guys. We are responsible here at the AOP team to process all the administrative requirements for the applicants as well. So that is in form of waivers. Anytime you or your applicants have to run a waiver, whether it's age waivers, drugs, whatever the case may be, we are the one that process those waivers, not the enlisted side, operation side of the house. So unique there as well. Program changes, sometimes people change graduation dates, so they go from 1 year to graduating a year afterwards. So those are the kind of things that we process here. We serve as a quality control hub during officer application times. So every time somebody submits an application, obviously it goes through your OSO, right? But we are really here at districts the ones that look at it and ensure that everything checks the box, right? Make sure that they are, as crazy as it sounds, U.S. citizens, right? Like we verify that there's a birth certificate in there, that there's or a passport or whatever, right? Social security cards. We look for those things just to make sure that the officer package is actually in accordance with the officer commissioning manual, right? Sometimes OSOs, because of lack of experience, they don't look for those things, but we are really the ones that QC those packages to make sure that everything's squared away with them before actually giving the thumbs up to MCRIC and say, hey, we do have a fully qualified applicant at our level. And then after us, yes, there are some additional QC steps, but really we are the ones that control all that stuff. So monitor the officer candidate pool. That's a big one for us as well, and it ties to the accession mission. Again, not to get too complicated, but just know that we do have we care about the officer pool, because whatever we have right now, say for the PLC freshman class, sophomore class, junior class, we have to make sure that we're tracking those candidates at that point, right? Whether they're once trained or fully trained, to make sure that they finally assess. So. Big difference between the enlisted side, right? They go to boot camp, they become Marines. For us, they go to officer candidate school, and then they come back, and then they can still not commission up to the day that, no kidding, they raise their hand, they can walk away anytime. So that's kind of what we monitor. Once they come back, we just make sure, actually Nick specifically, he's a pool manager for the district, he manages and makes sure that everyone is still scheduled to graduate on whatever date they originally applied for it. And if not, then it goes back to the whole process, the processing at administrative requirements and that sort of thing. Facilitate selection boards. We do host, we are responsible here at district for executing the PLC board. So that is the program that internally we manage. So basically the way it looks is all the applications come through the officer selection station, they send it over to us, we QC, make sure everything's squared away, and then we hold the actual boards here on site at district, not actually here, although sometimes we do host them in this room. It is different than the officer candidate course board, which is held at the region level. And for that, once again, the application process goes through just like on the PLC side, except that myself, I screen for all the applications, touch bases with the OSOs just to make sure that I brief them, because I'm responsible for briefing the OCC applicants to the region at the region level. So I'm the representative for the board, for the district as far as the OCC goes. But either way, we facilitate boards for both the PLC and the OCC. We monitor candidates. Once again, the medical process, I'll go over a slide, the breakdown of what my team looks like in the next slide. But a lot of that, the QC process is the medical processing, and that's where the McMeds, LOD, line of duty, NAMI, flight physicals, that sort of thing comes into play. So we again monitor all that stuff as part of the pool management piece. Sir?
This is Bella, and I was eating at the captain's table. I told her I'd bring her in, so she doesn't bite.
We conduct OSS SRIs as well and TNA visits, so systematic recruiting inspections. I'm the guy that typically goes down to the OSS as you guys get inspected by the rest of the training team, and I inspect the officer selection team myself to make sure that obviously they're in compliance with the systematic recruiting references, or the volume 2 as we call it on our end. And then conduct TNA visits as well. We actually have 2 of our team members out there doing training assist visits as we speak. So that's a big portion of what we do as well. And then assist RSCOs in validating annual plans. That's a big piece, right? Oftentimes at the RS level, the knowledge of the officer mission is minimal. So that's where we come in and help the RS teams validate that the OSOs are actually planning the correct way, because sometimes the officer mission goes in cycles, and again, that's a whole nother class, but just to make sure that they are planning in accordance with that known cycle, and make sure that they're doing all the right, hitting all the right markets, law market, female market, so on and so forth. Any questions here in this slide? I know it's a lot, but just bear with me. So the next one is just a breakdown of my team. Obviously, I already introduced myself. I'm basically responsible for everyone else, right? But as far as I go, I would say that the biggest thing is I'm the bridge between the OSOs, district COs, region, MICRIC, and facilitate the communication paths between all these tiers, along with managing our team here, which once again is composed of the aviation assistant of officer procurement. We already talked about him, Captain Vidaroff. He's really responsible for running all the waivers, processing the waivers, QCing them, make sure that everything's squared away. The McFOP, the flight orientation program, so he's really responsible for the part of our micro missions. One of them is air, right? So he's really the one that's responsible for being the face, speaking to those applicants that may be interested in becoming flight officers. So that's one of his primary functions as well. And I already talked about the pool management, pool program management as well. And then we have the training chief, which currently is Master Sergeant Jennings, and he just loves training. He's one of the team members that's out there spending time with OSOs right now, specifically with the Salt Lake City OSO at this point, and just teaches them how to do area canvassing, just anything and everything about recruiting, whether systematic or no kidding, cells, all that stuff. So he does a lot of train and assist visits, and he does help me out with some SRI as well, depending on where I'm at. Then we have the operations chief, which at this point is filled by Gunner Sergeant Flores, and he is no different than the enlisted operations chief. He's the one that's calling the OSSs, requesting for updates on their workers, making sure that their workers are constantly moving through the processing chain to make and as well as train them, right? Like if they hit a snag, as he's on the phone with them, he trains them to make sure that they're pushing those applicants through the process. He handles the OPPC program, so just like the EPPC program, we have one on our end as well. keeps tally on that, just making sure that those OSOs are actioning those OPBCs in a timely fashion, in an adequate fashion as well. And then he tracks the schedule training for all the OSOs and OSAs and gets them through the appropriate training as mandated by MIGRIC OP. I spoke about my chief, so I actually have a Navy corpsman that works under us, and he is the one that's responsible for making sure that everyone is qualified, medically qualified for whatever program they're applying for. Perfect example of this is the flight applicants. They have to have certain qualifications that a ground applicant or reserve applicant have. So he's the one that makes sure that they get to NAMI for the flight physical down to Florida, and then everything else as well, all the ground programs, the reserve programs, the genders, obviously there's different requirements for them, and it's not as cut and dry as it is on the enlisted side, where you guys just send them to MEPS, and then if they're qualified, they're qualified. If not, they're not. It's a little bit different for us, and that's why we need that person here, just to make sure that everything it's going to be squared away by the time they check in at TBS or OCS and whatnot. And then we finally we have a civilian as well. Mr. Bruce Kuran, he is Human Resource Assistant. That's what HRA means. And that there's the equivalent of him down at your level as well. So every OST does have the OSO, the OSA, sometimes two OSAs, and then the HRA as well. And they are the subject matter experts, once again, for all processing as far as administrative goes. And he serves the same purpose at our level, except that he, once again, QCs all the packages that come his way, just to, once again, verify that everything matches and the whole entire package is not missing anything. So QCs and screens and forwards all requests for appointment. As part of the process, it's a pretty intense timeline between the time an applicant applies and by the time they ship to TBS. A lot of things could happen in between that process, and that's where he comes in, just to make sure that, hey, as they progress through the timeline, that they're meeting all the administrative requirements necessary to keep moving forward and eventually commission, and leading to that request for appointment, RFA request. Any questions here? No? So as of right now, we're fully staffed, which is great. In addition to these individuals, we do have 2 members in our team right now that help us out with other stuff. We have Gunner Sergeant Gonzalez, who is leading a lot of the social media campaigns that we have. So he's putting a lot of content together along with the MACO and her team, to just get material, build it for the OSTs and get it out there so they can push it via social media paths. And we also have a Captain Barry right now. We assist Captain Biederoff with processing waivers and any other administrative matters that we need within the AOP. But for the most part, on a regular day, this is the team that makes up the AOP. Okay, so just like on the east side, tons of metrics, right? This is what we do on a daily basis. We screen for officer candidate applications, and we tally them based on, we screen them, sometimes we kick them back. Again, Bruce doing his thing as far as the administrative QC process, he'll send them back. Or he'll count them, right? So a submission, going back to the things that you guys care about, is the submission credit, right? So as you can see here, we have OCC classes, 3 of them throughout the year. We're currently at dealing with the OCC 248 class. And as you can see, there are a lot of metrics or missions, specific missions that we deal with. It's not as cut and dry as, hey, it's a contract, either male or female. If you break it down and really look into it, and this is where it gets difficult for the OSTs, right? It's about 32 components, categories, and year groups. So it can get pretty intense. You can see the big ones here: the air mission, or I'm sorry, the ground mission, the air, the law, We had cyber at some point, UAVs at some point, not applicable right now, but the reserve mission, and then we break it into the diverse groups, right? The females, the African Americans, Hispanics, others, and then obviously you see the total at the end there, right? So don't worry about this. If you have questions, if you look at it and you're like, what am I supposed to take out of this? You're not. Just know that you have us. You can always pick up the phone, and if you see any reports, which we send on a weekly basis, and we send this, and you're like, well, what does this mean? Just pick up the phone and call us, right? So, but this is our life. On a daily basis, we pull numbers, and hopefully we keep filling the submissions, right? So again, you see the submission mission, which is what you guys care about, and then obviously there are selections and a bunch of other things that go afterwards if they do in fact get selected. Do I have any questions here? Okay. So trends, issues of discussion. So I think the biggest thing, and this is just me to you guys, and it's been something that the former AOP talked to me about as well, is just facilitating relationships, right? Making sure that we are seeing eye to eye between us here at district and down to your levels, right? The RS levels. Because of that complex relationship that we have with, we work with the OSOs operationally, but they really report to you guys, but they deal with us more so than you guys. Just making sure that relationship is flat, and making sure that we're speaking the same language. So when they're reporting, hey, I submitted 3 contracts, it matches the tracker that I just showed you guys, right? And you're like, well, it doesn't match what my OSO's telling me. That's when it becomes really difficult for us to, again, just communicate with one another, right? Because sometimes, because of the complexity of the mission, the submission, the induction, the accession, sometimes we're saying the same thing but in different terms. So that's when it really becomes a little bit challenging for us. So communication between the AOP shop to the RSEO or RS triad, and then the OSO. Sometimes the communication is not necessarily tight, and so continues to be a challenge. I mean, it's a people business, right? Just like anything else. So that's why we need to do a lot of this face to face. You know who I am, you know who Nick is. So if there are any questions, just pick up the phone and call us. If something is not making sense, if you're seeing a number that doesn't match what the OSO is saying, it may not necessarily be that they're lying to you. It may just be the lack of, again, it's a mission, induction mission, a session mission, tiers that again, we may be saying the same thing, but not necessarily in the same way. So relationships, please talk to us. That's something I applaud RS Austin for them inviting us to come down and just teach you guys about just officer mission stuff, right? We're always open to that. All you got to do is put in this request, and then we'll show up down there and provide you guys with knowledge into whatever it is that you need to know. So, big trends and issues, the micro categories, right? So I spoke about how there are about 32 different categories, components, and year groups within the officer mission, right? Right now, we're not doing so hot in the officer mission. We haven't for the last 2 years, and quite honestly, it's probably not going to get a lot better anytime soon. But it's not because of our ability or inability to produce the number of contracts that the Marine Corps is asking us for. It's really this right here, the law mission and the female mission. That's where we struggle the most. So what does that mean to you guys? Well, if you hear, hey, the officer mission's lacking, right? They're falling behind. It's probably because of that, right? So at your levels, you have to just ask yourself, what can I do to support that mission? Well, maybe it's just going and supporting the OSO in air canvassing event, right? Just getting out there or asking the questions like, hey, I know my cousin's an attorney, right? Maybe, and he lives in the, this area. Let me talk to him and see if I can link him up with the OSO. long story short, just think about those two micro categories, because that's probably what we're lacking on, and just thinking like how can I support that? That's really where we're struggling right now. As far as producing contracts for Regen and MICRIC, no issues with that. Like, we always over-submit in all other categories except those two. So, but nonetheless, unless we meet those, we miss mission, right? So that's why they're so important and continue to be a struggle for us. What should you look for in your OSOs and your OSTs? Quite honestly, is just initiative. There are the volume 2, which are the references, and I'll hit that on the final slide, but the volume 2 tells you how to run an OST. All you gotta do is read it and like try to get in there, do it for a little while, and then come back, read it again. And all the lessons that we as an AOP team go down to your station and teach are within the volume 2. But they have to have the initiative to do that. Like, keep doing it, repeat, because as they spend time out in the streets, they have to revisit, and then it's gonna click, right? But they have to have that initiative. They have to be go-getters. They have to get out there, think outside the box, be responsible enough to say, hey, the law mission historically has been challenging. So what else can I do to not let that be a problem for my station, right? Instead of, well, it's hard, so I'm just going to continue doing the things that we've been doing, and it's known that it's going to be challenging. So therefore, if I miss, it's not that big of a deal. Wrong answer. They have to be go-getters. They have to think outside the box. Go knock on people's doors. Whether that's the bar association or I don't know, LinkedIn, Facebook, like just anything else, but they have to have that initiative, that drive to continue pushing even when they get punched in the face.
I want to just pile on that. I would also say it's the initiative to get to know your 8411s, because India, you got the most successful OSO, I guess numbers wise in the room. Fort Worth, you're not far behind, but the relationship that Captain Juarez has with the enlisted recruiters is awesome. And he puts the bat signal up, hey, I need this, and here's what you're gonna get if you do give it to me. And it's a quid pro quo, like anything. Hey, we're fucking Marines, incentive driven. So I just add to that, if you can vibe with your enlisted recruiters, you get in some cases 80 more eyeball sets that can look for whatever you're trying to hunt.
Yes, sir. No, I appreciate that. So one thing I did not mention, obviously, to be an AOP, you need some OSO experience, right? So I spent time out there as an OSO as well in Springfield, Missouri, out of the 9th Marine Corps District. I could not have done my mission without the enlisted side. 1,000% would not have. Especially females in law, because those guys and gals were always out there, and I knew that I couldn't cover as much ground as they could on a regular basis. So yes, sir, absolutely making sure that your recruiters and your OSOs are tight, and when you find yourself in all hands and you think like, where's the OSO? In my opinion, they should be there. Whether it is to just sit there in the back and then shoot the shit with the enlisted recruiters during break, like that's why they should be there. But 1,000%, they will struggle more. I don't want to say they will fail if they don't, but they will struggle more if they don't link up with your teams. So please make sure that they are doing everything and anything to get tight with those enlisted recruiters, because they're critical. So what else? I mean, reports, right? They drive reports on a monthly basis on the CGAP. We just standardize everything. So all you have to, you should be receiving a report from your OSOs on a monthly basis. The RSCO should be receiving that, right? And it's standardized. So we put a bunch of big brains together and said, okay, what does the RS need to know on a regular basis, on a monthly basis, so that they are, making sure that OSOs are on the right path. So we put all that stuff together, form of CGAP, so that's out there. So if you're not seeing that, again, on a monthly basis, just ask the question like, hey, why am I not receiving this? And again, pick up the phone if you don't remember anything. Just pick up the phone and ask like, hey, what should the OSO be reporting to me? Knowledge at the RS continues to be a struggle. Talk about this all day, but at the end of the day, the knowledge of the officer mission is limited, and that is limited to the 8412s that have served as OSAs, which at this point is minimal. So that's why everyone has to rely on the AOP team to, provide knowledge into the officer mission. So it's all about requesting support. Keep going back to that one, because we do understand that there's a limited amount of knowledge about the officer mission down there. So please, once again, ask for help. That continues to be the trend. Hey, we don't know what we should be asking. Well, you have us to just pick up the phone and call, and we'll help you guys out. Did I miss anything, Captain Applewhite?
Sir.
No? Captain Applewhite used to be our OSO in Houston, so he knows everything and anything about the officer mission. So these are our references. I mentioned the volume 2, volume 5, everyone should know that one, and then the officer candidate manual. So again, this is no kidding, step by step, what tells the OSO what they should be doing on a regular basis. And like, no kidding, it tells them like, hey, these are all the things that they should be doing in February. These are all the things they should be doing in April. And if they're not, they should have an answer as to why. Because we do understand that some things change, but for the most part, this process is pretty standardized. It's pretty standardized, and I kid you not, just takes that initiative. You go back to the volume 2 and read through it and like, oh yes, this is how I'm supposed to be doing this. This is what I should be actioning this month. This is what we should be looking out from, or what I should be expecting from my pulleys this month, or in February, for example, getting transcripts. All that stuff is within the volume 2 guidebook for officer selection officers. The volume 5, again, that's, you guys know more than, or actually no, I'm thinking about the volume 3, I'm sorry. But volume 5 just tells us what we're responsible here as an AOP team. And then the final one is the officer commissioning manual. Again, that's just the rule, the Bible for commissioning, right? And that's what we relied upon. So to say yay or nay, that applicant can in fact commission at some point based on what the OCM says. So 2 big references I would say are this one and this one that you guys care about. So just know that they're out there and they're open to everyone. Do I have any questions? No? Everyone's an expert. The omission. You have anything to add that I might have missed? That you as a former OSO feel that and I'm sorry to put you on the spot, I think you could probably provide a lot of insight now being on this side.
OSO is interesting because, as you mentioned at the beginning, you're getting written on by the RSCO, but you're having daily interactions with the AOP shop. And for a long time, it was big E, little low. It's kind of changing. Right? We're focusing a lot. We're trying to invest more time and energy into the officer side. As you're looking at, this is my opinion, but as you're looking at manning, I think it's important to have some subject matter expert down there, especially with the first year, so they'll kind of snap them in. You only learn so much in any initial course, or SOC or anything like that. So having a 12 or a season 11 down there, you can really kind of fill in the gaps. Hey, this is how we do that. Don't do this. This is dumb. That's helpful. And then, to belabor his point about the COs with the enlisted mission, the OSO we have now was the officer for 2 years, so he knows all of the Marines and has established a rapport. And the amount of referrals that we've seen come through the office between my time as an OSO and his time as an OSO is triple. So they have been a force multiplier for him.
Good.
That's huge.
Yep. Good. Sir.
I would just add that The OSO mission, we had MICRIC come out here about a year ago.
February.
And look under the hood. Hey, Eighth, what ails you? And we had a lot of ailments, but there was one glaring ailment across the whole district, and it was OSA continuity, lack thereof. Okay, some OSOs in their first year had 3 different OSAs. Okay, so you can see how the blind's leading the blind here, because not a lot of 8412s even know about this, because they've never done an OSA. And then you've got somebody who's been there for 5 minutes and then they're doing something else. So I would just, everybody in this room is in some way a sentinel of your unit, and the sergeant majors, most of all, you know you're sending the right liaison to a unit when it hurts, when they're gone. That's when you know. Now, FAPS, CAPS, are you going to send your best person to go be a grass ninja or be a gate guard? No. But we're talking about a liaison from your unit to another one. Think of the OSA assignment that way. You know you're sending the right person if it hurts. And it's probably going to hurt a lot more if that's an 8412. Okay. Related to that, and Master Gunny Cobb and Mr. Results can attest to this, a guy named Major General Berlakis was the MICRIC CG, and he saw red lights flashing, alarm bells going off on the OSO mission, and he said, somebody once told me that the 8412s teach all of us how to do recruiting. Why aren't they mandated to be in a OSO shop? So he waved the scepter, and every OSO, 74 of them on planet MICRIC, had a 8412 that was required to be there. Now, obviously some sent their shit bags and ones they wanted to get rid of or whatever, but other ones sent really good ones. So I offer that to you because if you're in a staffing meeting and say, hey, who's going to be the OSA? And the RI shop's like, oh, no, don't do it, don't do it. Okay, I'm not sure how much longer we're going to hold out the way it's going in officer recruiting. So we as a district, you as an RS, you may want to get ahead of that and put some of your best 8412s as OSAs. Because probably if you don't start doing it, I'm gonna do it for you, or somebody above me is gonna do it for me. So.
Yes, sir. And Nick, do you have anything for them?
I got nothing. Like you said, I'm up in the OP shop. Feel free to reach out if you guys have any questions. I love taking your phone calls. Yeah.
So I'll close with this. As a former OSO, and now I've been here in the seat, the one thing that I wish that I would have done as an OSO would be to have better relationships with the triad. And I really mean that. I was making mission, fortunately. Times are a little different now, and that's attributed to I guess my success at that point. Mission is a little harder now than it was when I was an OSO, but I think my life would have been a lot easier if I would have had a better relationship with the RS staff, with the XO, as far as the NROTC mission. Right, all the non-selectees. I wish I would have known that she had the keys to that castle. Right, all the non-selects say, "Here you go, screen them." The RS OPSO, just more calls as far as like, "Hey man, I have a guy or a gal on deck with college credits. Do you want to sit down with them and screen them?" I wish I would have done that too. The sergeants major just come down and do pool PT with my pool and try to help me figure out why I was losing so many people, so many poolees along the way. I wish I would have done that too, never did that. In fact, I think the sergeant major might have stopped once or by once when I was there. And then the RSCO, I think my relationship with him was pretty good. again, at that point, we were making mission as a Marine Corps, as an OSS. So I think that one was fair, but I think if we would have not been making mission, his more involvement from him would have been helpful. Helped me harder questions as far as my female recruiting, that kind of thing. But overall, I think my life would have been a lot easier. The one thing I did right, and I said it already, was building that strong relationship with my enlisted recruiters. I think that's what got me through. But all of you guys, I wish I would have done that. So if they're not asking for help, I would just inject myself anyways and say, hey, I'm here for you. Here's how I can help, and try to understand what they do and how you can support in them and make their life easier, because it is a very, very tough building, as is yours. But yeah, that's all I have. Again, open to questions now or later. I will likely send you guys an email at some point, so always feel free to pick up the phone and call me, and I'll talk to your ear about the officer mission. But at this point, I don't have anything else. Master Guns, I'll turn it back over to you.
Questions?